Hey everyone, my name's Cam, and today we're doing a deep dive into the advanced weather features of the Garmin GTN 650Xi. Whether you're navigating storms or planning around icing, the tools built into this unit are total game changers. Today we're going to explore Sirius XM, FIS-B, and Connext weather sources, as well as Stormscope integration on this unit for tracking lightning. Let's get started and see how we can elevate your weather avoidance skills. The GTN 650Xi taps into Sirius XM Weather. This is a satellite-based subscription weather service that provides a wealth of information throughout the whole continental United States and southern Canada. It's the most comprehensive of the 650Xi's weather input sources, but it does come at a price. Subscription options range from $30 to $100 at the time of filming this video. Let's break down the different overlays that you can access with an XM subscription. Now, before we get too deep into this, I do want to mention that you need to tastefully use each of these weather overlays. You can stack a bunch of them on top of the map and give yourself so much information that your mind doesn't even know how to process it. I prefer to use just one or two overlays at a time, and if I'm going to do multiple, make sure they all complement each other. The first overlay that we will talk about is the Nexrad overlay, which is the one that I use the most frequently. What it does is it displays a mosaic of precipitation data across the United States, and the color depicts the type and intensity of the precipitation. So you can see there's wintry mix here, and then it transitions into rain in southern Arkansas. There is a play button if we go here in the menu where we can play back the historical Nexrad picture so we can see kind of the direction that the storms are moving. Now, this is not a substitute to onboard weather radar or ATC advisory because this is historical information. You can utilize the movement in the playback to estimate where the storms have moved to, but if you're going to actively navigate around storms, be sure to get in contact with ATC. Moving on from Nexrad, we can talk about echo tops, which does display a little bit of noise above each radar station, but the primary function of this overlay is to display the tops of storm cells. And the reason this is important is because the height of a storm cell is typically a good indicator of how powerful it is. So these lighter sections down here are showing higher tops, whereas the darker gray areas are showing a lower elevation for the tops. Just kind of giving you another picture of how intense the storms are in the area. Now, cloud tops operate very similarly, other than the fact that they just show the physical cloud layers throughout the United States, and they're not necessarily measuring the intensity of storms. This is pretty handy for if you're going to do a VFR cross country and you're getting on top of the clouds, you want to make sure that your destination is open or has some holes to be able to drop through. You'll be able to tell if it's overcast, if it's open, or if there are some holes like down here in this bottom corner that you may be able to pop in through. It's worth noting that you can move your pointer around and it will measure the cloud tops. You can see here we're at 30,000. Over here is 25, and if we go down here, you can see that they've come down to 10,000 feet. So it just kind of gives you a picture of the tops of the clouds. Moving on from clouds, we can start to talk about icing. Now, this is going to show a visual representation of icing potential throughout the specific area. But you'll see here we have this altitude selector tool. So this is going to move in 3,000 foot chunks, and it's going to visually show the icing conditions for the different layers throughout the country. So as we increase our altitude, we'll see that there's some little bit of ice over here. And we can zoom in over northern Montana and see the intensity of this ice. And if you see a bunch of little red dots sprinkled onto the map, that indicates supercooled large droplets of water, which is a pretty big threat to aircraft. And that means that there's ice that can form instantly to the wing, and it forms very clear, so it's hard to know if you've gotten any. So it's definitely an area to avoid. We can move on to the turbulence overlay by enabling it here. You can see that we still have the altitude selection tool there, and it moves once again in 3,000 foot increments. You can see that it's shaded, whereas green is indicated by light turbulence, but as you get into the oranges and the reds, it gets more severe. So this is a great tool to figure out how smooth your ride is going to be if you're doing a cross-country flight. Now, the winds aloft layer can be kind of scary and intimidating at first, but we can break it down. So this is going to show the winds aloft barbs for across the country. It has the same tool to be able to select your altitude. Now, what makes these kind of difficult to read, in my opinion, is that the tail actually faces into the wind. So you can see down here, the wind is coming out of the northeast, and the barbs at the end of the tail designate how strong the wind are. So you can see these are 3 long skinny tails indicating 30-knot winds. Now, as we go up, the winds will get more intense. As they get thicker, that indicates a 50-knot wind. And then your half-length tail, like over here, is indicating 5 knots. So this one, you'll just add them all up, and this is 45 knots of wind. Moving here, we can view more overlays, and we'll start with this city forecast. And this is going to show kind of just your domestic weather forecast for a specific area. So it's going to overlay the symbols that we're kind of used to. So sunny, partly cloudy, storms. And you can click on each individual symbol to view the domestic weather prediction for that city. So here is the name of the city, as well as a 48-hour forecast. If you want to change the time frame for these symbols on the map, you can scroll down here to change the forecast period. So if you want to view it, say 24 hours from now, you can click on that and view the weather forecast. I don't use this a whole lot, but it is an option. From city forecast, let's look at surface analysis. And this is going to display fronts, high and low pressure centers, as well as isobars. I'll be honest, the 650 is not the best device to view this information on. It's, when your screen's this big, you're trying to look at it in the cockpit, but it is available for you if you want to be able to view where there's high and low pressure across the country. So we can scroll down here and activate the lightning overlay, which is going to show lightning strikes. Now, this is different from a Stormscope in that they're not going to fade with time, and they're not going to be as accurate as a Stormscope, but they do say that the strikes are going to be within a 2-kilometer radius of the center of these strikes. It's just important to keep in mind, like, a lot of these strikes are old, so this is 16-minute old lightning data, whereas a Stormscope is going to have it available instantly, so just keep that in mind if you're trying to utilize that data for navigating around a storm. The METAR overlay can be activated here, and this is going to sprinkle flags all across your map. The color of the flag is going to indicate the current weather conditions. And if you want to view the detailed METAR, you can just click on any of them. It will give you kind of the translated or broken down METAR, but then if you want to view the raw text, you can come down here and view that. Also, if there's any TAFs available or terminal aerodrome forecasts, you can view the raw text data here as well. The cell movement overlay can be paired with Nexrad. I'm not going to pair it here because they don't line up in the simulator, but this can kind of show you the direction and the speed that different cells are moving at. You can even click on it and view detailed information about a specific cell. So you can see that this one is moving at a speed of 15 knots to the east, and the top of that cell is 25,000 feet. So that can be really good information to know if you're trying to decide to fly around or over it. Like I said, it doesn't give you a whole lot of information on its own, but it's really handy when overlaid with Nexrad. PyReps and AirReps can be activated, and that's going to sprinkle a bunch of squares over the countryside. So the different color squares give different information. So routine PyReps are blue, and if you're not familiar with PyReps, they're just pilot reported weather conditions such as low visibility, ice, wind shear, turbulence. You can view all sorts of information, including the aircraft type, which is pretty handy. Urgent pilot reports are indicated by a yellow square. So you can see that this SR-22 is reporting moderate to extreme turbulence. That's definitely something to keep an eye out. AirReps, on the other hand, are designated by green squares on the map, and this is just automated weather reporting from aircraft in the area, which is mostly just winds and temperatures aloft. County warnings can be turned on, which is going to designate just different local conditions. So you can see that these are different flood warnings for different counties. You can also view some of these warnings for natural disasters, tornadoes, wildfires, and all that as they pop up. So it's probably only pertinent for if you're gonna land at that county in question, but it is there and available. SIGMETs and AirMets can be activated as well. So a SIGMET is going to be a significant meteorological condition. So you can see, for example, we've got this convective SIGMET here talking about wind conditions. AirReps are going to be specific to single engine or VFR aircraft, normally talking about limited visibility or icing, but good information to know if you are in that aircraft type. Freezing levels can be activated, which kind of just shows you a color-coded map of the different freezing levels across the country. So you can see the pink is indicated by 18,000 feet, and it goes down to 16,000 feet the further north we go. So it can just be kind of a nice graphical, color-coded way to figure out where the freezing levels are across the country. And finally, the last overlay, which is very specialized for SiriusXM, but it's the cyclone overlay. So it's specific to hurricanes and tropical storms. If you're going to be flying over the ocean and worried about intercepting a tropical storm, you can view the projected path of that storm as well with time and date stamps. So that summarizes SiriusXM weather, so let's transition into FIS-B weather. Now the GTN 650XI supports FIS-B weather, which is a free service powered by ADS-B, and it's a part of the FAA's Next Gen system. It's a go-to for accessible weather and traffic information, completely free to anybody in the United States. Now it's nice because it's free, but it does have its limitations because it's ground tower based. So that often means that in rural areas or at low altitudes, you may not get full FIS-B coverage. So that's just something to keep in mind. Whereas with Sirius XM coverage, it's satellite based, so you don't have to worry about it as much. So let's see how FIS-B stacks up and compares to the overlays available with Sirius. So the first difference is going to be in Nexrad, and you have to select either ConUS, regional, or both. Essentially, ConUS is going to show a low resolution radar image across the entire continental United States, whereas regional is going to show a higher resolution radar image, but closer in proximity to the tower. And then you can view a combined version of that, which is going to have this shaded ring depicting regional coverage, and then the black is going to be the ConUS coverage. You can see as we scroll down here, you can see it's kind of a grainy radar image, but it's enough to be able to tell, hey, I probably don't want to be flying over Southeast Georgia today. As you get closer to the storm, the resolution will increase, allowing for a little better navigation. However, this is still historical data, so definitely get ATC's help if you're going to navigate around active thunderstorms. The rest of these overlays are the exact same as SiriusXM, so I'm not going to go through them again, but we will go ahead and talk about center weather advisories, which is specific to FIS-B weather. And this just communicates en route and terminal weather conditions for an area. It's only for the next 2 hours. So you can see when it was issued, and then the period in which it's active for, and then the report. So this one is reporting moderate turbulence in the area and then severe mountain waves. So it's just good information to know, it's relevant because it's less than 2 hours old. Just something to be cautious of if you're navigating in that area. The last feature I want to talk about that is unique to FIS-B is going to be GAirMets. And essentially this is going to show a bunch of overlays for the area, and the different colored overlays depict different types of information. So these little dark blue overlays indicate freezing levels. So you can see in this area, the freezing level is 8,000 feet MSL. And if we move over here towards the mountains per se, then you can see that there is mountain obstructions due to precip or IFR conditions. So just the different colors of AirMets depict different conditions. A list of all of them are icing, turbulence, IFR conditions, mountain obstructions, surface winds, low-level wind shear, and freezing levels. Now, if you don't care about some of these, you can filter out your unwanted ones over here on the GAirMet filters. So you can turn some of these on and off and tailor it to exactly the information that you want to view. The last button, which isn't an overlay, but is an option, is the data link status here. So if these are highlighted green, then that means you have good, accurate current weather data. Whereas if they're grayed out, then you can see that it's unavailable, or if they're white, it means you're awaiting weather data. So it's just important where if you can't get something to load, click in here and see you may just not be receiving that type of information through the ground-based towers. Now let's move on to talk about Connext Weather. Connext is an Iridium satellite-based weather subscription provided through Garmin. I will say the weather service is typically just a byproduct of having a sat phone or text messaging capabilities built into the unit. The nice thing about it is it covers the US, most of Canada, and most of Europe. So you get a lot of good coverage if you're often going across the pond or something like that. The downside is it comes at a cost, so it's expensive. It doesn't refresh very often, and you have to have the very specific GSR 56 satellite receiver installed in your aircraft as well. So it's probably not an option for most of us, but if you do have a Connext subscription for the sat phone, you might as well utilize the weather features as well. Now, unfortunately, none of these layers work, but you do have access to precip, which is similar to Nexrad, an infrared satellite, winds aloft, lightning, METARs, PIREPs, SIGMETs, and AirMets. Now, for your Connext settings, there are quite a few. It's kind of unique in the sense that it doesn't refresh as frequently as FIS-B. So if you want to manually do a push, you can request data. To adjust the auto refresh settings, you can click here and select the interval in which it refreshes. Depending on what package you have available will depict how frequently you can refresh the information. I think the only way to get like 5 and 10 minute intervals is going to be to have the highest package. So that's just something to keep in mind. The coverage region is also something new. So you need to tell the GPS what locations you want it to pull Connext data for. So along your flight plan, and then you can choose either remaining or just for a 50 nautical mile leg into the future. You can import it for your current location, for your destination, or for a specific waypoint. The coverage diameter is modified here, and that's essentially how far away from your designated point is it going to pull the data for. So currently it's going to pull 300 nautical miles worth of data from your current location. This can be tailored up and down from here. And then lastly, the data link status has the option to type in your access code if you do end up buying a Connext subscription. So you can type in that code and press register. So the last thing that I want to dive into is the integrated Stormscope capabilities of the GTN 650xi. So if you have a Stormscope installed into your aircraft, you can access that information through the unit directly instead of having a dedicated Stormscope box taking up space in your panel. The functionality is the exact same as kind of the old school Stormscope interface. So you can clear your strikes by pressing this button. But before I do that, I want to show that the symbols change as the strikes age. So you can see these larger strikes are very fresh, and then they turn into smaller strikes and then slowly transition into pluses. So this gives you a good indication of how old that strike is. It also counts how many strikes it's received in the past minute. So you can see we're doing 24 strikes per minute. The rate is a good gauge of how intense the storm is. So if the rate is increasing, then that cell is probably developing. And if the rate is decreasing, then that means it's probably dissipating. There are a couple of settings that you can adjust here. So you can toggle between 360 degree or an arc view, and then you can change it from cell mode to strike mode. So cell mode is going to identify a cluster of electrical activity and group it as one strike, whereas strike mode is going to show every individual strike on the map. So it's just personal preference on how busy you want your screen to be. You can toggle back and forth between those modes here. From the detailed weather overlays in Sirius XM to being able to track electrical activity with Stormscope integration, you can see that this unit is pretty powerful and allows you to navigate through a lot of different weather challenges. Knowing how to use these can help keep your friends and family safe when they're flying with you. Although you're going to use some of these more than others, it's important to have a nice well-rounded education on how you can leverage each of these features given the specific circumstance that you're in. If you're currently flying with the GTN 650xi and using these weather features, let me know what your favorite is in the comments below. I thank you for watching this video till the end. If you made it this far, it means a lot to me. I hope you guys fly safe, and we'll see you in the next video. See ya.